So the idea of nakedness in the Bible, the idea of being either naked or dressed, is also an example of a concept that applies to different scales of reality. So when we say in the Bible, when it says naked, it's a very deep concept, but we can talk about it a little bit. I don't think I'll be able to reach all of the implications here, but the idea is naked means natural.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it means. But that has a whole lot of implications in the Bible. So things are natural. When you say they're naked, it means they're in their natural state. So, but if you think about this ancient cosmology, what was the most natural state is the first day of creation, before creation, is this world covered with water. Okay, that's what the most natural thing in that cosmology is the flooded world. This is a little bit strange. We're not used to thinking
No,
of that,
yeah,
like
that's
that at all.
that's tough for people to get it, but it's important. It's really important.
Yeah, it's important because with that idea, you can understand a lot of the symbolism in the Bible. So the most natural state is this state of cyclical reality, which is the first day of creation, where everything is fluid. And that goes with the idea that things haven't been differentiated yet, right? Everything is connected in a fluid way. Things aren't distinct. So when it talks about being naked, it's related to that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is why also in the story of Adam and Eve, it says the snake was the most shrewd beast of the field.
Yeah.
Okay, but the word shrewd means naked.
Yeah.
Okay, but then when you understand the idea that naked in the Bible refers to the most natural state, then you can understand why the snake is naked. Okay, because the snake is like this fluid being. He's like the water at the beginning. Naked means natural. It's like the most primitive state. Now, there's nothing wrong with nakedness until the fall.
Yeah.
Because things were naturally mediated correctly. That's the idea of the fall. And then when there's the fall, it means Adam and Eve tried to eat something they couldn't handle. That means they tried to take facts include facts that they didn't know what to name, how to explain with their theories. That's really what it means. So when you eat something that you can't handle, that's the miniature version of a bigger picture where you see things that you don't know how to name. You can't name. You can't identify.
That has something to do when Jordan Peterson is always talking about this kind of entry into chaos where you face something which disrupts what you know. It's like, and all of a sudden you don't know. Like he talks often about this idea that you find out that your spouse has been cheating on you for 10 years, and so that hitting of a fact or something that you can't handle, throws your whole world up into upheaval, and it's like everything is on the verge of falling apart. And so then you have to work at putting things together. Like you have to, it's like it needs the work to bring things back.
You have to fix things. Yeah, exactly. You have to fix things, make them fit your mind again, make them fit your plans. Yeah. So the idea of nakedness and dressed, it has a cosmic meaning and it has an individual meaning. So the idea is that things are either in a natural state or they're artificially fixed to make them work, to make your theories match the facts. So this happens at the individual level. I mean, you have an idea, have a plan, but maybe your body, your passions or whatever don't cooperate.
Yeah.
So you want to do something, but let's say you're lazy. That's your body telling you, no, sorry, I don't agree with your plans. I'm not going to follow along. So you have to artificially force yourself to do certain things. So that's what it means to be dressed in the Bible. And clothing itself is an example of that. So again, it's not about having metaphors. The idea of clothing, that's what clothing is for ultimately. It's to correct your passions, okay? It's to give your head, your mind, your things that have a purpose, to give them dominance over your body.
Yeah, because you're cold, so that's an example. Let's say you're cold, and so you wear clothing so that you're not cold. Also, if let's say you everybody was naked, and all of a sudden, your desires would be
Yeah, there'd be problems.
always be awakened. And so to clothe them is to be able to manage those desires so that you can do something else besides being completely taken over by those types of thoughts and such.
Yeah. So here's another example of, again, of seeing it as at different scales. So you can say, for example, so clothing, when it talks about dressing in the Bible, another example, if you look at it at a slightly bigger scale, so at a social scale, let's say, at the scale of a society, well, you have the same idea. You have some individuals that are the head of that society. They're the leaders. They make the laws. They make sure that the laws are followed. And then you have a population. So the idea is, in order, dressing this society would mean making laws and forcing people to follow the laws. Like jail, for example, is an example of clothing, but not at the scale of the individual, at the scale of a society. So you make some laws, people don't naturally follow those laws necessarily. So what do you have to do? You have to fix the population so that it follows your laws. So when you put people in jail, that is the equivalent of dressing yourself,
right? An extreme
yourself.
Version of dressing.
Yeah. Well, it's only extreme because it's a bigger scale.
It's at a social level, right?
You look at it at a bigger scale, it's always more extreme. I mean, if we were at the scale of our body parts and we saw that what dressing did, we would probably find it extreme. So what does it mean to dress the body at the individual level? It means put clothing on, but it also means to force my body to some degree to do certain things that it naturally wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you could either be lazy or you could have too much energy or something like that, and you have to restrain yourself. So in a society, same thing. There are certain rules that are there just to restrain, artificially make the body coherent.
Yeah. And so I think that if we try to come back slightly to our beginning point, which was talking a little bit about, let's say, the place where thought is today, and the like the questions that scientists and those types of thinkers are asking themselves, I think that we can come to this notion of this concept of emergence, which has been kind of a buzzword for the past 10 years or whatever. I don't remember exactly when it started, but it's idea that these patterned beings appear at different levels of manifestation, like an individual, a city, then the cosmos and planetary systems and all that in fact, and the struggle scientist types have in accounting for that jump in different levels of manifestation. Well, I think that we can say that the key is consciousness. Like, it has to be consciousness, and that taking into account the self-referential loop at the beginning, right? The self-referential loop of self-awareness and consciousness is, and in including the fact that we are the ones looking at these phenomena into the system, is going to be the only way to get out of this dilemma. One of the things that I want to do in these YouTube channels, and hopefully we can do it together as well, is maybe sometimes take particular stories or particular laws in the Bible, and then just show people how that fractal structure of symbolism, how these patterns embed themselves in each other, and how really almost all, like, let's say all of them even, are just a repetition of that very first story in Genesis of the creation story, where heaven and earth are separate and then united in the human being. That all the stories are just kind of these repetitions of the same pattern in different ways, at different scales, with different variables, but just kind of repeat the same and fit into each other.
Yeah. The story of the Garden of Eden is the ultimate pattern of everything. It's meant to explain everything. Well, there isn't a solution to it's meant to explain the problem that we're in.
And there's a grand pattern in the Bible, like the grand story, which kind of embeds all these things together. And this idea is that you have this garden at the beginning, and then the fall, we move away from the garden, and we keep moving further and further away from the garden. And as we move further and further away from the garden, we have to supplement that fall with artificial like clothing, then agriculture, then cities, etc., etc. And in a way, it's like it's like a moving away from the garden, but it's also a way. It's also a way to preserve the possibility of being mediator in heaven and earth.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
to preserve the, yeah, exactly.
then at the very, very end of the whole story, this idea of this new Jerusalem that comes down from heaven, we have this idea of that the final, let's say, manifestation of this whole big pattern is a giant city, right? So a perfect city, let's say, which is the full supplemental thing, with in the center the garden, with the tree in the middle, in the garden in the middle, and then the whole center. So it's like there's this whole this whole story in the Bible, and then at the end there's an image of the final result of it, which kind of re-encapsulates the whole story, let's say. So it's like that's also an example of how these patterns, like they embed themselves in each other, and then finally there's this final image of this giant pattern of how the world exists. Yeah, we'll get there at some point, start talking about how the story of Christ is like almost is this answer, like constant answer to the dilemmas and the openings that are proposed in Genesis, how his story kind of unites everything together, let's say. So but we need to kind of move through it slowly so that people can understand it when we talk about it.